Good evening. My name is Paul Grogan. I'm the Vice President for Government and Community Affairs here at Harvard, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here. Ordinarily, standing in my place would be Dean Joe Nye of the Kennedy School, or perhaps Senator Alan Simpson of the Institute of Politics. I don't know what business kept them elsewhere, but I'm delighted because it gives me an opportunity to be here in their place. The Institute of Politics is a great institution of this university. You never know who will be here one week to the next. One week it's Prime Minister John Major, former Prime Minister, Governor Jesse Ventura the next, and King Abdullah of Jordan the week after that. But just as impressive, we are supposed to have some fun tonight, but I thought it would be in a few minutes. This is really a very special night in terms of some of the people we have in the audience. As some of you know, we run a program every year for newly elected mayors from big cities around the country. They arrived today for a 4-day conference on urban issues, and they're here with us tonight. And I want to read the names of the cities that are represented by newly elected mayors. We have the mayors of Macon, Georgia, Birmingham, Alabama, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana, Baltimore, Maryland, Lincoln, Nebraska, Manchester, New Hampshire, Hamilton, New Jersey, Columbus, Ohio, Nashville, Tennessee, and Salt Lake City, Utah. Could those mayors stand and let's give them a hand. And of particular importance, we have two Massachusetts mayors here tonight, Dorothy Kelly Gay of Somerville and David Madden of Weymouth. They had a moment of concern there, I think, that they weren't going to be introduced, but I live in Massachusetts, and my sister lives in Somerville, as a matter of fact, so I wasn't going to forget that. We're going to have a great evening tonight that will be illuminating and perhaps entertaining. Now, I'm not going to have a chance to participate after this, so I think one of the things I'd like to say to our panelists is that the national political heavyweights that they are, that having these mayors here reminds me that we hear all too little about cities in our national political conversation. And for those of us who've been following cities in the last 10 years, there has really been a remarkable urban renaissance, and it's too little discussed in the country. And I'm very confident that our new cohort of mayors here tonight will give that spectacular renaissance new impetus. And it would be, I think, nice to hear a little bit more about cities and what some of our national political leaders think about them. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Ray Strother, who is a fellow here at the Institute of Politics this semester, a Washington-based political strategist, and he will moderate. Ray's impressive list of clients include Lloyd Bentsen, Al Gore, Gary Hart, Bill Clinton, and Mary Landrieu. He is also the author of a novel entitled Cottonwood, and is at work now on his autobiography. So, Ray, take it away. Thank you.
I appreciate all of you coming to see me. I'm overwhelmed. The format's different tonight. This is really a good time. No opening statements. It's all Q&A. So it can be as entertaining as you make it, I might say. But I have a distinct pleasure. That's to introduce these two men, both friends of mine. We tend in politics to make people plastic caricatures. We're for them or against them. And we forget that they're living, breathing people with ideals, and the best of them care about things. To my right is a man who cares about things. From the time Dan and I say good morning, from the time Dan Lungren and I say good morning, we disagree on everything else in the day. That's the only point we can probably agree on. He's a little to the right of me, about 1.25 miles. But Dan Lungren is a man worthy of consideration. I'm happy to call him my friend. He really gives a damn, and I think we're hungry for that everywhere. He's been a 5-term congressman with a rough bunch, Attorney General twice, candidate for governor, California was defeated, which happens to everyone. There's not a candidate you can think of who hasn't been defeated. Most have been defeated at least once. So that's no bad thing. I know Dan's wife. He has a great family. He has a Catholic radio show that comes on 3 hours a day, which is demanding, and says something about the character of the man. And I'm proud to call him friend. To my left, way left, is James Carville. And all of you think you know James. I was telling my study group today, you really don't. This man epitomizes what other people call family values. He's a husband and a father. But he's from a rock-solid Louisiana family, and I was fortunate enough to know all of them, to know his father briefly, his mother, his 4 sisters, 2 brothers. There's 7 of them. His sister even taught my daughter in high school, in junior high school, a Catholic girls' school. And James epitomizes the work ethic in our business. Everybody thinks he exploded onto the scene. He didn't at all. He worked in the trenches for years and years and years with a lot of defeats and a lot of tough times. But he was always there longer than anyone else. He always worked harder than anyone else, and he always believed in what he was doing. And he's a political consultant, and I'm honored and pleased to call him a political consultant. I think he brings credit. He brings credit to our profession, and he's an honorable man. So what we're going to do is, because I'm moderator and I have the microphone, I'm going to ask the first question. Then we're going to open it up, and I'm sort of go around. I'll try to keep it. I can't do as good a job as Senator Simpson. He's superb at it. And first of all, I'm not as tall as he is. But anyway, I'd like to ask the first question, something that's bothered me. Congress has turned into a mean-spirited body that seems to put partisanship over the national interest. The wheels of government grind to a halt while many congressmen spend their effort and time to wreak vengeance on a president they don't like. I think America's disgusted. How is this going to affect the upcoming presidential and congressional elections? Dan?
Well, I'm glad you didn't give me a loaded question. Thanks very much. I'd say 2 things on 2 levels. One is I served in the Congress from 79 to 89. Partisanship didn't just start. Partisanship has been there. And I'm not certain that partisanship is necessarily a bad thing. If you really feel deeply about issues, hopefully you're going to be partisan about it. And one of the reasons we have partisanship in the Congress is because you have a very narrow majority in the House of Representatives particularly, and you have people fighting over things that they feel very strongly about. So I don't have any problem with describing Congress as partisan if by that you mean they actually care about issues, they believe in issues. Now, if you're asking with respect to what's going to happen in the year 2000, the latest polls seem to suggest that the American people have some sort of feeling about the Congress with respect to the impeachment proceedings that has lingered on. It has continued on, although the feelings don't seem to be as strong. If you were to ask me, what about the elections today? According to the most recent polls, the elections today would suggest that at least marginally, Republicans would be hurt by the position they took on impeachment, and by that described as partisanship. My own sense is, as we get closer to the election, it will more be a reflection of what people think about the 2 candidates, whoever the Republican nominee is and whoever the Democratic nominee is. Although it has always been true that when a vice president runs for the presidency, people, in a sense, do look back to the regime of which he was a part, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a part of it. My own sense is it will not be as nasty, it will not be as cutting, it will not be as forceful an issue when we get to the presidential election as it has been in the past. But I answered that question assuming that your assumptions were correct. We could have a whole debate on that as well.
Well, there's a couple of things I'm not going to attack people for. One is being too partisan, because and given my grades, I'm not going to attack George Bush for flunking a test, because I flunked about 7,000 of them in my day. Best 4 years of my life was my sophomore year in college, but cast the partisanship aside. There's differences. One side said, we got a great idea, let's shut the government down. Not once, but twice. The other side said, this is a terrible idea, don't do that. They went ahead and they did it. One side said, we got a great idea. Let's spend $50 million on a sex investigation and impeach the president. The other side said, there's a better way to do this. They went ahead and they did it. They did it. One side said, we got a great idea. We're going to pass an $800 billion idiotic tax cut. The other side said, why don't we pass a smaller tax cut, increase investments in Social Security and health care and things like that? They went ahead and did it. One side said, we got this brilliant idea. We're going to cream poor people by extending out payments on the EITC. The other side said, oh, please don't do that. You don't want to do that to these people. That's not a good idea. One side said, we owe our UN, we are part of the community of the world, we owe our debt to the UN. The other side said, we're going to put stupid abortion riders that have nothing to do with it on there, make it impossible to play. They did it. One side said there's immorality. People are being killed not because what they've done, but because how they're born in Kosovo, and we're going to stop them. And the other side said, no, we don't want to do that. We're not going to do that. One side said we can have a comprehensive test ban treaty, that we can set the force for stopping nuclear testing. The other side said, no, we want to withdraw from the world. Forget the partisanships, my friends. There are real differences out there. And it is not, and you make up your mind. Do you want the government to shut down again? Do you want more of these idiotic $1 trillion tax cuts that give money to all their contributors? Do you want to extend out the payments to the EITC? Do you want to cut the school lunch program that they tried to do? Do you want America to withdraw from its position in the world? Do you want to go back to old-time isolationism? Because that's what this election is going to be about. And that's a fair thing. That's not a partisan thing. That's a fair rendition of what this Congress has stood for.
Okay. We're going to go to a question over here. First mic on my left.
And General, I'm glad you wasn't part of that Congress. I'm certainly not going to blame you for the idiocy that they.
Let me just say one thing, though. No, I'm serious about it. I know it's funny, and I know we're having a good laugh and so forth. But there is something about the cynicism that reigns in politics today. There's something about deriding politics and deriding people who are involved in it. And to suggest that people of goodwill can't have differences on issues without one side being idiots and the other side being all pure is just something that tends to help corrode the process. And I appreciate the fact that you're a consultant, and I appreciate the fact that you make a lot of money making these kinds of statements. But the fact of the matter is, we could debate the issue on the nuclear ban, test ban treaty, and we could debate it in terms of real issues and not just say that one side is for nuclear proliferation and the other side is for somehow goodness and light. There were, as I recall it, a number of appointees of this administration, CIA appointees, who suggested the president was dead wrong. There are, I think, at least 6 former secretaries of defense who said the president is dead wrong. If you think it's in the long-term bad interest against the national interest of the United States, I would hope that you'd move heaven and earth to try and stop it. That's not idiocy, that's patriotism.
Let me tell you, I will be glad to stand here and debate shutting the government down. Okay? I'll be glad to sit here and debate the $1 trillion tax cut that they tried to pass that nobody wanted. I'll be glad here to sit here and debate the fact that they tried to extend out the EITC to people, to the working poor. I'll be glad to sit here and debate the context of all of the votes that were taken, and when you put it into context of the Kosovo War, you put into context of the UN dues, you put into context of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, you put into context that you have Republican congressmen bragging that they never go overseas and that they don't care. I think there is an isolationist party and there is an internationalist party. Now, I think one side is right and the other side is wrong. That's what democracy is. I think that the Republicans were wrong to shut the government down. I think they were wrong to pass that tax cut. I think they were wrong to try to cut school lunches. I think they were wrong to try to cut student loans. That's what politics is about. And if in the interests of civility, we take out distinctions, then we have taken the central element of politics away. Now, and I do think that shutting the government down was idiocy. That's the only. I think that is a valid. I thought about it, and I say, do I want to say it? Yes? That was idiocy.
Okay, we're going to go to a question over here. This mic.
If Mr. Lungren wants to respond, I don't mind standing here and watching this for a little longer.
No, he's had enough response. We'll go on.
Well, thanks a lot for being here this evening, both of you. About the campaign, the media always wants a horse race, and they've got one on the Democratic side. My question is, do they have one at all on the Republican side, as much as they want to try to say that it might be narrowing? Does John McCain have a chance to have lasting power, or does George Bush have the rest of the country sewn up while he's kind of supposedly ignoring New Hampshire and McCain is gaining there? I just want to know, because the media is trying to say that it's narrowing, or is it really already over?
Dan?
Well, if you were to judge the campaign a year ahead of time by the polls, I wouldn't be here. I'd be governor of the state of California. It can change dramatically, quickly, unknowingly, even to the candidate. I can guarantee you that. But I'll say this. This is a phenomenon I haven't seen on my side of the aisle with George W. Bush. The staying power he has is absolutely astounding. I didn't expect it. The poll numbers that he's showing right now, the support that he's getting across the board, the most recent poll shows almost on every consequential issue, he's favored over either of the leading two Democratic candidates. I haven't seen that in my lifetime. So it may be that we have a phenomenon that we haven't seen before, and it may be this thing all just turns upside down over the next 12 months. If you're asking about John McCain as a candidate, he is a real candidate. I served in Congress with him, I think, for 8 of my 10 years. He is a man in the best sense of the word. He is someone whose word is his bond. He is someone who feels passionately about politics. I hear people talking about his temper. I've seen his temper. When I've seen John McCain angry, it's when he has seen his honor questioned, or when he has seen bullying, either physical bullying or political bullying. And he doesn't abide that at all. Yes, I've seen John McCain angry, but it's usually been, at least in every instance I've seen, it's been righteous anger. Is this man in for the long haul? He's in for the long haul. Does he have a lot of things to say that are good? Yes. Do I agree with him on everything? No. But yes, he would be a qualified candidate, a tough candidate. And if anybody in George W. Bush's campaign thinks this is over and they can wave goodbye to John McCain, they're in serious trouble.
Just a moment of amplification on what the general said here. They don't give these things away. And nobody's just going to walk up on either side and just take it and walk away from it. You're going to have to fight for it. And both the vice president and Governor Bush are in a tough fight. My guess is, and it's a guess, it's an educated guess, but that's about all it is that they probably will both prevail and they'll probably both end up being a general election. But I also believe that McCain will right now win New Hampshire. And Bush is caught, they're all caught between a rock and a hard place because none of them want to answer what they're going to do about the Confederate flag in South Carolina. And so you might, if you got a question that you want to ask George W. Bush to give the answer on, he's been, as we say, bobbing and weaving. Okay? He don't want to answer the question. So I think they're going to chase him down pretty good here before it's over. But I think McCain's going to win South Carolina, win New Hampshire. And I think it's going to be a tough fight. And I think the vice president knows already that he's in a tough fight. But I never have seen anybody, and I think you'll back me up on this, the nomination of a major party is a big prize and it's worth something, and you got to get out and fight for it. And anybody that thought they were going to go through this thing in a cakewalk has now found out they're seriously mistaken.
Over here.
Zon? Oh,
Can I ask everyone to identify themselves by name and house or whatever you wish?
sure. If you want. I'm Josh. I'm a freshman here, and I'm in Hurlbutt. Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you, what is a house? What's a house? What's a house?
I'll tell you about
I
it
suppose
later.
it's the thing I live in. I don't know. That work?
I'm James Carville, 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a carport. Bad carpet in the playroom.
I just want to preface my question by saying to you that I am, at heart, a Democrat, so please, if you can in any way avoid it, do not tear me to shreds.
Did you not what?
Here it comes.
Did you not
All
what?
right.
Just don't tear him to shreds. He's a Democrat.
Okay, you're not going to be torn to shreds. He's a very humane guy, you know.
I can tell.
You better be a good Democrat, boy, I'll tell you, sir.
I didn't realize there were bad ones.
You've been at Harvard too long.
Go ahead.
All right, the Democratic Party has come under attack recently, well, with Clinton, about our foreign policies. Some people say that we don't even have one. And you brought up the point that we shouldn't go back to being isolationists like we used to be. My question to you, though, is if we're not going to go back to being isolationists, where do we draw the line where we interfere with other countries? Is Kosovo too far? Is Rwanda too far? I mean, where do we stop?
That's a very relevant, fair question that, frankly, I don't know the answer to. I mean, I don't mean that it is. I think that in fairness, and I mean, it is after, if you had one side, you know, the communists bad, we good, and then when we didn't have that, I think everybody is, in all fairness, trying to feel their way through the world. But I think if you take these actions over a period of time, I think that you're seeing a distinction emerge here, and I think that you're seeing the president and the Democrats tend to favor a more internationalist approach to our policies, while the Republicans favor a more isolationist approach. I also think, and having been there in 1992, I think the president has taken our party in trade from a party that was generally anti-free trade to one that has become generally free trade. I understand we didn't pass the last trade bill, but the president tried. But I think out of this, a direction is emerging. Now, if I can tell you exactly what the line, where you draw, what is the fact, when do you draw the line for American intervention and when you don't, I don't, you know, that I can't do. I'm not, if the General Lungren wants, if he has that answer, I'd be glad to listen to it. I may even agree with you, but I don't know that.
No, I don't think you'll agree with this.
Okay.
No, but if your definition of internationalist is to commit ourselves in more places than we ever had before, while at the same time tearing down the capacity to fulfill those commitments, then yes, this administration is internationalist. Your suggestion that this president brought his party to accept free trade and GATT is interesting, because this president relied on the Republicans in the Congress in order to pass that, because he couldn't get sufficient support from the Democrats, who are still fighting him on that. If your suggestion is my party is isolationist, we just had someone leave our party because it's not isolationist. His name is Pat Buchanan.
Well, no, he left because it wasn't pro-Magnum.
That didn't sell. Fact of the matter is, with Pat Buchanan going out there talking about isolationism, by my definition, I think he is isolationist, he was getting about 4% of the Republican vote. He left that to go to another party to see if he can do a little bit better, because our party is not isolationist. If you're talking about the party that realizes that if you're going to make commitments, you have to have a sufficient defense posture, that's my party, not your party. Your party has continued under this administration to cut and cut and cut defense, not only through the fat, but to the bone and the sinew. We're having trouble right now in terms...
Now just make one fact. Okay, now just one fact. Can I just enter one fact?
You had time to talk.
I'll make my fact when you get through.
You had time to talk.
I'll make my fact.
It has not been since the Jimmy Carter administration that we have had enlisted men and women in this armed forces qualify for food stamps. I was in Congress when we changed that. We haven't had that until this administration came in. We haven't had trouble in terms of getting people into the military in the last 12 years until this administration came in. We haven't had trouble keeping people retained in the military until this administration came in. So maybe you want to talk about how we're going to do all these things, but you got to back it up. You know, you got to put your money where your mouth is. This administration hasn't done it and still isn't doing it.
I admit I got to put my money where my mouth is. Fact. This administration has requested more defense spending since 1994, when the Republicans took over, than they authorized. Let me repeat that. This administration has requested more in defense spending since 1994 than the Republican Congress has authorized. Now, we want to talk about military recruitment. Do you know why we're having trouble getting recruits in the military? Want to venture a guess? Because the economy is good. And so what we need to do is go back to the Republican plan of supply side and wreck the economy, and that way all these kids will want to go in the military.
Wait.
No, what you do is you put your money where your mouth is, and you put money into personnel, which this administration has refused to do it.
Tell your friends in the Congress.
No, we have increased the Republican.
First balcony.
Thank you.
The Republicans in the Congress
sound-
have increased the spending for defense in the
Dan, have you ever heard of
funding
sound
bills.
bites? Sound bites. 30 seconds.
Tell him too.
Carville. First balcony.
Up here?
Up there.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
there. I don't know where you are. I can't see. The lights are in my
All right. My name's Rahul Rahatke. I'm also a freshman here at the college, and I'm one of the few Republicans left, I think, on the campus.
All right.
And actually,
You know what the pandas feel like at National Zoo, right?
I have a question about the Republican Party. I mean, recently it's come up, there's a big split, it seems, between social conservatives and moderates, and, you just kicked Buchanan out of the party. And I'm wondering, what's going to happen if Bush doesn't win the election? Who's going to be the leader? What's going to go down? Are they going to split? I mean, it looks pretty bad right now for us.
Okay, let me just say one thing. I didn't kick Pat Buchanan out of the party. Pat Buchanan took his game and went to the Reform Party. I didn't do it. I'm just giving you a reporter's report on what happened. You're talking about what's going to happen to the party. Look, parties follow the leadership that is presented every 4 years at the National Convention. My suspicion is that George W. Bush is going to be the nominee. If I had to bet on it, that's what I would say. But John McCain may be the nominee. In either case, I think they'll be outstanding leaders of the party. They've shown an ability to bring different aspects of the party together. George W. Bush down in Texas has brought people together, having resounding victories there. John McCain has been able to bridge the differences within our own party in Arizona and in the United States Senate when I served with him in the House of Representatives. Look, as many divides as we have in the Republican Party, it is nothing like the Democratic Party that controlled for 40 years when on one hand you had civil rights leaders like Hubert Humphrey, and you had out-and-out racist segregationists. You had the Alabama Party of the Democrats that had a slogan of white supremacy as a banner, which was their official indication for about 40 years. They were able to bring people from those distances together for campaigns. We don't have anything like that divide in our party right now. I have no problem feeling that we'll be doing just fine. Just wait till see our nomination and see what happens after that nominating convention.
James, any comment?
Well, I know we're going back 40 years, but anyway. Look, in 96, 98, 99, the Democrats have had 3 good years. I would say going into 2000, objectively, I think I and most Democratic political professionals feel pretty good about our prospects in 2000. Now that, we got a year to go, almost exactly a year now, maybe just a tad under it. But, and it's not just a New York Times poll this morning. I think things are looking pretty good for us. I think we had a good day last Tuesday. We had a good day in '98 in the Congress. And I think that the country has given the Republicans a chance in the Congress, and I don't think they much like what they see, and I think that come 2000 we'll at least have the House back. Good chance we'll have keep the presidency, and an outside chance we'll have the Senate. But that's a prediction. We've got to fight it out.
Let's go to the second balcony to my right somewhere. I can't see it.
Anybody there?
Is there a mic up here?
Nobody can see up there. Our light is...
Okay, we'll go back over here.
My name is Richard Callan, and I'm a long-ago graduate of the wrong side of the river. I'd like to point out, I guess, the media and our guests tonight have spoken at length about how the country is fed up with the President and the Congress fighting all the time and not getting much done. And I'd like to ask our guests if, in fact, instead of calling the American public idiots, maybe the American public is smarter than the idiots on either side of the aisle, by routinely over the last number of years electing different Congresses and different presidents basically to keep the government from doing too much in one way or the other.
Question.
Is the American public doing the right thing by electing presidents and Congresses of different parties to basically keep the government from doing too much of one thing or the other in the wrong direction?
Good question. James, why don't you feel that?
Well, I mean, I don't. There's all kinds of studies. I don't want to get into sort of if more happens under divided government or under unified government. Basically, I think that you live with the results of the election that you have. I don't think people go in and vote and say, "Gee, I think I'm going to vote for this person for Congress, and I'll vote a different party here." I mean, it arrives at that, but I don't think it's that kind of a direct. I don't think. I mean, maybe there's some, but vast majority of people that vote will go in and say, "You know, I think things are going pretty good. I think I'll keep a Democratic president. And the same token, I think I'll keep my Republican congressman." I mean, I don't think it's a conscious thing. If it's a good thing or not, that's up to you, the individual. I think it would have been a better thing if we'd have had a Democratic Congress, but I would obviously say that because I'm a partisan Democrat. But I don't think people arrive at the. It might end up there. I don't think the thought process goes like that. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I've been involved in politics as a volunteer since I was 6 years old. I've been a candidate since 1976. I have met one person in all my experience who ever said they consciously voted one way for executive and one way for legislature so that they, in fact, could have a divided government. Now, there are some positives in a divided government from my standpoint when the president happens to be on the Democratic side, and one of those is that the Republicans do fund larger amounts of money for defense than the president requested. From 1995 through just give you some facts. From 1995 to 1997, the Republicans in the Congress used the budget mechanism, the budget resolution, to add $21 billion to the president's request for defense. And in fiscal year 99, they added over $9 billion to the president's defense request in the Omnibus Appropriations Act. That's adding, not detracting. In that case, I was happy for divided government.
Okay, we're going to next question here.
My name is Janice Cooper. I'm a mid-career student here at the Kennedy School. And you've delineated the differences between the Democrats and the Republicans, but for people of color, people of my skin tone, there's not very much difference. And I want to know, why would a person of color want to vote for either party when they're not addressing some of the critical issues to our community, like the overrepresentation of kids of color in the juvenile justice system or in the child protection system, like the issue of that Jesse Jackson just pointed out this week, about suspending kids from school for over a year because they did some act. So can you respond to that?
Dan, why don't you field it first? Carville did the last one.
Oh. Well, on the Republican side, I would just say this. The effort to try and bring down crime, which has been a Republican-directed effort joined by this president over the last couple of years, is something that assists the minority community more than any other community because they have been victimized by crime more than that. In doing that, perhaps there are some things that ought to be relooked at. For instance, the tremendous penalties that we have for crack cocaine. Some people think that that disproportionately impacts on the minority community. But let me give you a reason why that occurred. I was in Congress when we increased the penalty. We increased the penalty on a bipartisan basis when a Democratic member of Congress came to our subcommittee who represented an area of New Jersey that had a large minority population and said, crack cocaine is killing this community. People are coming to me asking for us to do something. Therefore, we need to increase the penalty to reflect the damage that's done in that community. That's why it was done. It was done for that purpose. If an unintentional or unintended consequence is that there is a disparity of sentencing for crack cocaine versus other drugs, then we ought to go back and revisit it. But it was done on a bipartisan basis in response to a request from the minority community to do something about that particular problem. I would suggest this. I think this is a sleeper issue on education, frankly. I think we have to recognize that for a large number of young people in the minority community, the schools they go to are terrible. They do not get the kind of education they deserve. They do not give a starting chance in this society. And this is the exact consequence that you would expect from the largest monopoly in the United States. There is no competition there. I happen to think Republicans ought to be talking about not only reforming the public schools as public schools, but creating an opportunity for competition via the voucher, because it's the fastest way to improve public schools. It's the fastest way to help inner city kids who are suffering from bad schools today. And if you look at any poll today, the strongest support for vouchers in the United States is among African Americans by about a 68% number right now. That is at least one area in which it seems to me my party can start addressing a real need of the minority community. I think one of the most substantial needs that exists out there and is being ignored and continues to be ignored.
James?
Well, first of all, just a couple of facts for your consideration. I'll just start with the crime bill. The president passed his crime bill in 1993 with, I think, very few, if any, Republican votes. Since that, the crime rate is down 25%, the lowest point that we've had in 30 years. There have been 400,000 guns that have been confiscated from felons as a result of the Brady bill. The president is ahead of schedule of putting 100,000 new policemen on the street. Now, after 7 years, the crime rate is down 25%. That's a pretty significant achievement. But let's go beyond just crime. The president expanded the earned income tax credit, which was a boon to the working poor, of which many happen to be African Americans. The president raised, against Republican opposition, the minimum wage, which was an enormous help. The president did everything that he could to pass national health insurance, but has increased the CHIPS program by millions of children, many of which are African American children. The president was never the president's idea to stretch out and cut the EITC. That was a Republican idea. It was never the president's idea to cut a lot of these programs that they wanted to cut. But I'll give you a graphic example. I would like for every African American mayor who is an elected Democrat to stand up here right now. And I want you to see just time and time again how Democratic parties help. Please stand up, mayors. I've met you right there. Stand up. And these people in these communities know. They know who has been there for them. They know who was there for them in the civil rights movement in the 60s. They know who has been there for them when it came to expanding opportunity, when it came to things like the EITC, when it came to things like raising the minimum wage. They know who has been there for them when it came to making a record number of appointments of African Americans. They know who was on the forefront when they did what they did to Ronnie White. People know that. They know that not just these elected mayors, not just the politicians, but down in the street at the level of America, African Americans know what president, they know what party has stood with them and has stood by them and has fought for the things they care about. That's why in overwhelming numbers they vote Democratic. That's why in overwhelming numbers they went out and voted Democratic in 1999, and they're going to vote in overwhelming numbers in the year 2000 because they can see and they can feel what's going on in this country. And that's living proof when I ask these people to stand up.
Okay, balcony over to the left. Oh, yeah.
Yes. My name is Alex Rubalcava. I'm a sophomore in Elliott House.
What
you
is
gentlemen...
Elliott House?
Yes,
Talk about it later.
Oh, okay.
You gentlemen both tonight have been in a sort of arms race, claiming that each party on its own is more for defense spending than the other. But I'd like to remind you that it's November of 1999 and not November of 1989. The Berlin Wall is down 10 years. The Cold War is over. With no major enemy in the world, why do we need to spend more money on defense? Why, when we already have a defense budget that is 10 times greater than any other country in the world, do we need to spend more money on defense?
The world's a dangerous place. Yeah, I'm not one to sit here and think that we can cut defense any more than we have. I think we can have, we need to do things reasonably. We don't need to go out and pay the $800 screwdrivers and that kind of foolishness and things that we can't do. But I'll tell you what, there's two periods in history. That's periods of war and the period between wars. And we just happen to be fortunate enough to be in the period between wars. That don't mean that we're not going to go to a period of war. We have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of prosperity in this country. We have a lot of things, but we have a lot of responsibility. And I think that we have to be within reason. We have to be prepared to meet this responsibility. I don't think we have to be silly about it. I don't think we ought to be wasteful about it. But I think that we got to stand up. I think we had a responsibility in Kosovo. I think we discharged that responsibility and discharged it rather effectively. I think we have responsibilities around the world. And I'm not that, probably less than, I'll let him speak for himself, but I am not I'm a free speech, free trade, pro-defense Democrat. I believe people ought to say what they got to say. I ain't for shutting any speech now, and I think people ought to be able to buy what they want to buy, and I think that we got to be ready to meet reasonable obligations around the world. I'm no isolationist.
To interject, who do we need to defend ourselves against?
Well, I mean, you could how do you, first of all, we need to defend these people in Kosovo. Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen in China. I can't tell you what's going to happen between India and Pakistan. I can't tell you any of the things. I mean, I can't tell you what's going to happen in the former Soviet Union and these republics. I can't tell you what's going to happen in Russia. I mean, I'm not clear on that. I mean, do I think somebody, I don't know. But I know that history teaches me to be cautious about this stuff, and I think we need a reasonable defense that that is at the president's disposal to use as these crises arrive. And I think that we about hit the point that we're about as low as we need to go. We ought to look at a way to reasonably, we don't, like I say, we don't need to go back to the goofy days when we just were throwing money at it, but where we can reasonably build our defenses back up. Dan? And I just make the point is, if you think that because communism is dead, that our obligations in the world have somehow or another just dissipated, I just disagree with you.
Okay, Dan?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Jim said. However, to talk about the days in which we were capable of and did, in fact, come out on the right side of the Cold War as goofy days, I think is a cheap shot.
I didn't say they were goofy days. They were
Well, I
goofy
think
to
that
pay
was the word
$800 for a
to you.
screwdriver.
I think you said they were goofy days in which we threw money at it. There were errors in those days, but we had a buildup because we had to respond to a threat that hadn't been responded to for some period of time. And I would agree with Jim Carville on this. Just because the Cold War is over doesn't mean we don't have to be concerned about Libya, Iran, Iraq, Syria, China. One of the leading military officials in China said last year when we were talking about Taiwan that he doubted that the United States would be as concerned about Taiwan as it would about Los Angeles, and intimated that they have intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the West Coast. Now, as a native of California, I'm a little concerned about that. Maybe here at Harvard, you don't have to worry for another couple years, but in California, we're concerned about that.
I live in Los Angeles.
Well, then you ought to be worried about that.
Okay, let's go to the woman in red in the balcony.
Hi. My name is Kathy Lee. Yeah, I'm not the talk show host. I'm a freshman here. I actually didn't want to ask anything about politics in specific, but rather politics in general. I believe that Attorney General Dan Lungren, or former Attorney General Dan Lungren, mentioned that there is an overriding cynicism. And I was wondering what you two felt that we could do, whether it be politicians or media or schools or any kind of institution, to reinvigorate general interest in the government and reestablish a faith in that same government.
James?
Well, I think one of the things is that is at work now is we had a period of pretty good prosperity and relative peace, and I think people's minds turned to other things. Since 1960, there's been a declining trend each year in turnout in presidential elections, with one exception, I'm proud to say, 1992. It was the only turnout actually went up between 88 and 92. So this is not something that has sort of just blossomed up overnight, if you will. I think that I think we live in a country where we give all of the blame to the politicians whenever something goes wrong and we don't like it. And I think if we were just as Americans, we were willing to give half the credit when something went right, I think that would do a lot. But I think we live in a culture where everybody makes fun of politicians, everybody decries politicians, everybody makes jokes about politicians. Every time that something goes wrong, They say it's all the politicians' fault, and everything that goes right, they say, well, that happened in spite of the politicians. Well, who in the hell can win at that? I mean, if that's if every time you make an A, it's in spite of yourself, and every time you make a C, it's because of yourself, well, you're never going to get ahead. So I mean, I think there's a whole underlying cultural tenet where if you're a young person and you look at that, and you're saying, I know what these mayors over here go through because I worked in the mayor's office. I was never a mayor, but I worked in the mayor's office. And you're sitting there for 4 years and you get blamed for every pothole, but you get no credit for building a new highway through, or you do something like that, then it gets old. And I think that we have let the cynics permeate society. And I'm saying is, look around you, look at politics, look at some of the things that happen, and you'll find that there's some good things that have happened, and good things that have happened all across the board. And I'll tell you something else. I love politics. And I've been working in it, and I actually like politicians. And I'll say this to anybody. There's one thing that they do that other people don't. All of these people on the radio and all these people that, griping and everything else, when politicians do something that very few other people do, is they dare to fail publicly. This man sitting here, I may not agree with a thing he did. He put his name on the line. He started out, he was ahead in the polls. He lost an election. Everybody knew about it. It was on the front page of every paper. If you don't get into...
Don't remind them.
If you know what? I'm saying if you don't get into the law school or the graduate school that you want to, you know about it. Three other people know about it. Your family knows about it. You don't get the grade that you want. You suffer that humiliation privately. People like him and other people in politics, they suffer their humiliations publicly. That kid gets in trouble, it's on the front page of the paper. They're late filing their taxes, it's all over the paper. They don't pay the Social Security for the person that mows the lawn. It's all, these mayors know the same thing. They're the most scrutinized people that you can imagine in their community. So all I'm saying is when something goes wrong, go ahead, tee it up, give them all the blame. But when something goes right, give people a little credit. And if you do that, you'll find that better people will get in and good people will stay in. That's all people want every now and then, is a little pat on the back.
Yeah, I've been on the ballot 18 times. I won 16. It seems people only remember the 2. Sort of bracketed my victories with a couple of defeats. If I had the answer to your question, I'd sell it, because we need that answer. This country was born out of a healthy skepticism about government, and certainly centralized government. And I think that's healthy, to continue with that tradition. But when skepticism moves to cynicism, the whole process is corroded. And the question is, how do we stop from moving over the line from skepticism to cynicism? I got a couple of suggestions. One is get more people involved. I mean, people say, they bemoan the fact that more people aren't involved, and oftentimes the people complaining about not being involved aren't involved themselves. First thing is an invitation for people to get in. In most states of the Union, it's a very simple thing to get involved in politics. I'll tell you, you show up at the local Republican organizational meeting or Democratic organizational meeting, and you stay past 10, you'll have something important to do by midnight, because they need people to do things. It is such an open system that you can get in. The price of admission is virtually just showing up. Secondly, I'd say this. I would appeal to the press to do a better job of trying to give a message to the people about what politicians are doing on substance. There's so much of a desire to talk about the horse race and so little to talk about the issues that are involved. The third thing is, I would refrain from calling somebody that I disagree with an idiot. I'm serious about that. You can go after somebody's positions without going after that individual. And there's something that's happened in politics where we think that if you have a tough fight and there's a clash of ideas, there's got to be animosity. You got to hate the other individual. Politics is the clash of ideas. The fourth thing, we ought to quit confusing campaign reform with some sort of idea that we're going to rub all the vitality out of the system. Sometimes it seems that people are so hell-bent on changing the finance system that we're going to have people just absolutely controlled so much that nobody can do anything wrong, that in fact you forget that the purpose of campaigns is to inform people. I have rarely heard anybody in this whole talk about campaign finance reform saying, what is going to happen with your capacity to get your message across to people so you can have an informed electorate? In some cases, we don't spend too much money on politics. We spend too little money on politics. If you compare what we spend to get the message out on politics to what we spend for deodorant, for God's sakes, you'd be embarrassed about the whole thing. I was on the Immigration, Refugee, and International Subcommittee for 8 years in the Congress. I dealt with refugee status. I dealt with immigrants coming to this country. And my district, when I would go out to see schools, it would be the face of the United Nations out there. And people would tell me stories about how their family suffered to come to this country. And they would ask me this. They would say, how come in this country that we fought so hard to get to, you folks that have been here all the time take it for granted? If I knew the answer to that question, I could energize people to get them to come out. The only thing I can say is, let's have campaigns that deal with real people, real issues. Let's all of us require that the press talk about issues and then pay attention to issues. And let's quit demonizing people who have the guts to run for politics. I'll tell you this, you don't get rich in politics, and you take a lot of slings and arrows. And frankly, we are stopping some people from being in politics because we are basically saying there's nothing you do that can be right. I'll tell you, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, most of them I served with are honorable men and women, and frankly, they have morals that are at least as high as the people who elect them.
Okay. Wait just a second. I finished, James. Yeah.
Is Governor Dukakis here? I saw him earlier. He left. And Governor Dukakis ran. They put out a rumor and said that he was in therapy. And then they said he was an invalid. Okay? Oh, yeah, absolutely. People in this room know that. How many people? Absolutely. Now, and you get into politics, if the price that you're going to pay for the interest in politics is you're not going to have disputes, you're not going to have differences, you're going to have that. And I told the class today, if the price that you want for admission is that you're always going to be successful, or the stars are going to line up just right for you, or you're not going to have that, that's not going to happen. That's not the way that things work in a democracy. There's going to be, in the most dangerous thing that you can ever hear is why don't they just get together and do the right thing?
I agree.
That's stupid, because people disagree on what the right thing to do is. Okay? And somebody thinks one thing is this, somebody thinks another thing is this, and I'll tell you what, this thing produces division. And you pick some things that you believe in, you stay true to those things, you fight for those things. Sometimes you're going to lose, sometimes you're going to win. Stick it out over a long period of time, and hopefully you'll win more than you lose. That's what it's going to produce for you. You expect much more than that from this system. It's just not going to deliver a whole lot more.
I'm losing control, and I'm a person who has to be in control, but then I have two guys on either side who have to be in control. Let's have some short questions and some short answers. We have to wrap it up pretty quickly. We have very little time.
Short questions, anyway.
Hello, I'm Daniel Kelly. Several months ago, Gary Johnson, the governor of New Mexico, came out in favor of drug legalization. He seemed to be the first person in at least about 80 years, besides the former mayor of Baltimore, to realize that the war on drugs has created an enormous crime problem and created an incredible worsening in the real population of people who are seriously abusing drugs, as well as being a totalitarian police state measure aimed at stopping people.
What's the question?
Putting in to their own bodies what they want. Do you think any politician will have the courage to speak up against the war on drugs anytime soon?
No, but I have the courage to tell you I think you're dead wrong.
Why?
Because my generation saw so many people destroyed by the drug culture that I don't want to see that repeated anywhere else.
You know, that was
Wait, you asked me a question. I'd be happy to try and respond to that question. The fact of the matter is there are certain things that work. During the Reagan administration and under the Bush administration, we had a single policy from top to bottom, which was a comprehensive approach, during which time we saw the use of drugs by teenagers in America drop by 50%. We saw that go up during the first years of this administration, and then finally in the last year and a half, we've seen it plateauing off. I think you can have a cause and effect relationship in terms of the attitude that we had as a society. We not only dealt with it with respect to government, we dealt with it with respect to the workplace. There are things that can be done that actually do work. Are we ever going to totally win the war on drugs? No, we're not going to ever totally win the war on drugs. But we can make a real difference in the lives of so many people. If you talk to folks who have successfully gotten out of drug rehabilitation, they will tell you that the numbers of successes in the group they started with are very low. Every single person who has been deterred from using drugs is a 100% success. The numbers who get involved in drugs, actually become addicted to drugs, and then successfully get off it are abysmally low despite all of our best efforts. So I'm not willing to give up on the war on drugs because I'm not willing to give up on your generation or any generation.
If I could just
Wait just a second.
interject.
The debate's up here, kid.
Everything
Okay,
you
Jay.
said was wrong.
No, I think we ought to have laws against drugs, just like we ought to have other laws. I don't think we ought to throw the towel in. I think if you look at what's happened here, we're doing a pretty damn good job on lowering crime. I think if you look at adult drug use, that it's going down. You know, you're not going to win every battle, but I think overall you got to keep fighting the war.
May I interject that almost no scholar would agree with the position
Look,
that laws
this isn't a
against
debate
drugs
for you.
should fight
Next
drug
question
use.
over here.
My name's Joe O'Brien. I'm a mid-career student, and keeping with the housing theme, I live in an overpriced apartment with 2 dogs and 2 cats. Real quickly on Al Gore, I wanted to get some feedback on Al Gore. I had the pleasure of meeting him in 1988 when I was working on an affordable housing project in the South Bronx. He really connected with working families when he toured and really gave a big vision about the country and did for a number of years. And now it seems like he's no longer connecting with working families here in this country and certainly with the electorate. Could you just give us a quick sense what you think he needs to do?
I think he's doing better. I agree. I think he stumbled a little bit out of shoot, and I think he's doing a lot better now. And I think he's got some. I think he's moving ahead. And my sense is I do think he'll be the nominee, but I think Bradley's done a good job. He's going to have to fight for the nomination, but I think he'll be fine.
Do you have any comment on that, Dan?
Yeah, I think the problem is something I said a couple years ago in the midst of all the problems that we saw with the president, and that was, it may be unfair, but I think the sins of Bill Clinton may be visited upon Al Gore. That's the only way that you can actually, at least in my estimation, make sense out of the polls. I served in Congress with Al Gore. He's an honorable guy. I disagree with him quite a bit. He's not the warmest guy in the world, but he's been successful as a candidate statewide and as a vice presidential candidate. He's been a loyal soldier in this administration. You look at all of that. You look at the numbers that the president has. You see the president's job performance rating. You would think that the vice president would bask in that and be supported in that. And the only thing I can say is that the American people didn't agree with impeachment, obviously, but if the decision is going to be made on re-electing this president, they're going to act through Al Gore. Unfortunate for Al Gore, but that's what I would suggest.
Look, every Vice President Bush was 17 points down in August of the election year. Just don't worry about it. We're going to win the election.
Okay, we're going to the balcony on this side.
Yeah.
2 questions. We'll have 2 more questions, and we're going to have to break it up.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to drugs for 1 second and ask, how do you think drug use is affected by having a president who smoked pot and a potential president who did cocaine at one point?
Dan?
Given my past, I'll just let it go, you know.
And you answer that in 10 seconds. Dan.
He's probably been, you know, I can't tell you, I probably took a, you know, he's probably got better to speak about that. I think that,
I think what people look at is the way the president or the presidential candidate handles the issue. I took very strong issue with Bill Clinton when he appeared on MTV and made fun of past drug use. I took a strong exception to that, not only because I'm the father of 3 children, but I was the chief law enforcement officer of the state of California. We were battling the battle on drugs. I had done that during my 10 years in the Congress. George Bush has been absolutely forthright in his position on what the government should be doing in drugs, what society should be doing in drugs, what we as adults and young people should be doing as drugs. I think that's far more important than what one may have done 25 or 30 years ago. Even in the president's case, it was the way he handled it that I objected to. I don't find that same criticism of the president. Would I have liked it if both of them could have come out and said, you know, I didn't use drugs when I was a young person. I made a conscious decision. I reflected on it. I thought it was a bad choice. I would have preferred that. If they can't say that, then I want to see how they handle the issue. What will they do in the office of the presidency in terms of this, which I think is a real threat still to the young people of America?
Okay, balcony, right balcony.
Hi, my name is Morgan Muchnick, and I'm a first-year student here at the Kennedy School. I just want to thank you both for coming. It's been really entertaining. And I was wondering, I'm a moderate, and I believe that both sides oftentimes are right and both sides oftentimes are wrong. And I was wondering what your opinion is as the elections become more and more towards the center in this upcoming presidential election. Is that good or bad?
Well, I mean, it always amazes me. I mean, I sometimes listen to the way the press talks about the American electorate, and it appears to be a one-winged bird. There's a right wing, and there's no left wing, and there's just this great big middle. You know, if what you mean by people on the right and people on the left having strong positions on particular issues, which mean that they would come to different programs and therefore different conclusions, I don't see what's wrong with that. Now, if you're saying you don't want to go at the very extremes of the right and the left, I can understand that. But if what you're saying is we're so afraid of the differences in opinion and that one might prevail on one issue and one might prevail on another issue, I think you're asking for a politics that has no vitality to it. I served for 10 years in the Congress. I know what compromise is. Compromise is what you do at the very end. If you don't have strong principle to begin with, you ought not to be in it. Get the hell out of the way and let somebody who feels strongly about it there. I mean, that's what I would say.
James?
There is a difference. One party shut the government down, the other one said no. One party impeached the president, the other party said no. One party passed the irresponsible, and yeah, I think an idiotic $1 trillion tax cut. The other party said no. One party tried to extend out and cut the EITC, the other party said no. You have differences. Okay? You have real differences. Whether or not they're as hard ideological differences as you might like, they are real differences. You look at what's going on in this budget fight right now. They are real differences in this party. You look at the proposals on health care from Senator Bradley and Vice President Gore compared to nothing so far that we've seen from the Republicans. They are real differences. You want to talk about foreign policy? George W. Bush gave forget the pop quiz. He gave an answer on the Middle East that is awful. First of all, he said that he didn't want to see Israel get run into the Red Sea when he was talking about the Mediterranean Sea. And he talked about an interballistic missile, of which there's no such thing. But then he said that he would take Israel's side, and then he was talking about using missiles at a time that somebody needs to tap him on the shoulder and say, these people at the peace table right now, they're trying to get a peace agreement and turn away from war, Mr. Governor Bush. And now it doesn't matter if you don't know the name of the hardware. It doesn't even matter if you don't know the difference between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. It does matter that we have a president that knows that people are working day and night, trying both on the Israeli side, the Palestinian side, the Syrian side, to see if there's some kind of way that we can put an end to a region that has never known peace, and we need a president that understands that. Al Gore understands that. Bill Bradley understands that. George W. Bush doesn't understand that. There are differences out there. There are things that make a difference, I promise
I'm just pleased that... I'm just pleased that you are rejecting the notion that prevailed in the election of which you had a part when Bill Clinton said international affairs don't count anymore. It's just the economy. But I'm glad to see that you've come into the fold talking about that sort of thing.
I would love to see the quote when he said international affairs don't matter. I've never heard him say that.
Two questions. Right over here.
Yes. My name's Helen. I'm a first year at the college, and I was wondering what question each of you would ask the other, and then I'd like to hear the answers.
Who's your barber?
Okay, that's Dan's question.
Actually, I got one right over there on Harvard Square. You know, that's about, I don't need one. Anybody, I see one and I go to them. It don't matter. They don't have much to cut.
First time he's ever been speaking.
No, who's my barber? No, I mean, I guess if I had a question, it would be, who are you supporting, Bush or McCain?
As a radio talk show host, in order to have people come on my show, no.
Right. I understand.
No, I have not taken a position on either one of them. I would accept either one of them. I know both of them. I've worked with them. I think they both have qualities of leadership, and I suspect that when the nomination comes around, I'll be working as hard as I can for the next president of the United States.
Just a final last question, woman in red.
Okay, I'm Felicity Spector. I'm a student at the Kennedy School. Looking at this array of presidential candidates, I can't help but feel I wish there was someone better. Where are the good leaders? Why aren't there any good leaders out there? Or is it just a question of learning how to be an alpha male or some such?
You know, I'll tell you something. I disagree with you. I think there are 4 people running that have a chance to be president. And I don't think we have a bad person in the 4. Okay? And I think if you look at all 4, now, are there 2 that I prefer to the other 2? Yes.
Which
I think, yeah. As one, actually, I do. I am going to vote if there's a primary in Virginia, but I am for the vice president. But I think that Senator Bradley. But you think of this country, you think of these 4 people running for president. You look at their qualifications, and you know what? We're doing pretty damn good. We got 4 pretty serious, reasonable candidates there, and we're going to see over a period of time, some are going to emerge to be better than others. If some are going to have to go through their trials and tribulations, some will show better than others will. But I really think that they're pretty, you know, they got 4 cards out there, and I think anyone that we drew would all, in their own way, decent people. Some just happen to be more right about things than others. No, I think we're pretty fortunate.
See, I don't understand the premise of the question. The fact of the matter is these are 4 men who've been involved in politics for considerable periods of time. They've had to make tough decisions. They've had to weigh, in many cases, alternatives that are not perfect alternatives in almost every case. They've had to stand by those decisions. They've had to try and deal with people in all segments of society because of the jobs that they have. They've in many ways dedicated themselves to public service when they could be doing something else. Who else would you have? Some Hollywood guy who comes here and tells you that I got 98% name ID, therefore I've got one issue I want to jump on, vote for me? I mean, look, I don't know why we denigrate public service, why we denigrate people who have worked their lives trying to make this a better place, making tough decisions, getting kicked in the rear end every time they make an unpopular decision. To me, that helps develop a leader. I mean, I happen to think that's where we ought to bring our presidents from. Occasionally, you might have a war hero that comes out of somewhere, but in most cases, it's someone who has come up through the political ranks. That means they've stood the test of time. Politics is an honorable vocation. I don't understand why people denigrate it. I mean, this whole institution is dedicated to a man who believed it was a worthy vocation. And we got to get rid of this nonsense that if you go into politics, it means you're only doing it because you're unsuccessful somewhere else. So I happen to think, yeah, we've got 4 qualified people. I happen to know all of them. I know Bill Bradley least of all. But all of them are honorable people. They could be successful in other lines of work. And they're putting themselves and they're putting their families. And let me tell you something. Unless you've done it, you don't know what it's like on your families. They're putting their families on the line. And God bless them.
I want to wholeheartedly agree with what he just said, and I want to make one other point. The only thing, these are all good people. The only thing that bothers me about the 4 of them is I'm not sure that any of them really like politics enough. I think that in order to be a good leader, you got to really know politics. You're not going to be a good president. You're not going to be a good mayor. You're not going to be a good governor unless you know how to get things done, unless you have a real, almost a lust for politics. And most of our great leaders have been great politicians. And I think that all of these are enormously qualified men. I think they accomplish people. I think they're risk takers. And I just hope, I'm probably the only person in America that would say this, I just hope they get more political And I hope when they get in office, they stay political, that they know how to deal with people like these mayors, that they know how to deal with the constituency group and the Congress and all of the things that we tend to, we tend to magnify and glorify people that are not politicians, and then every now and then we put one in office, and then we wonder why they can't get anything done. And it's just like, getting a plumber that's never picked up a wrench. It ain't as easy as it looks.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Lily. We didn't do too much damage.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
You're still live.
Huh?
Turn you off.
All right.